In this video, I'll show you how to completely automate the process for building faceless videos like this from scratch, step by step, complete with animated scenes, voiceovers, and captions.
Extension plan never proceeded. In 2018, the project...
But before we start to build everything out in Make and also Airtable, let me show you how it works. I've built out these 4 separate tables to separate our stories and our scenes and all of the different parts of a given scene. And then another table here, which allows me to get all of the videos and the images back from the API. And then also a table here that actually allows me to define different types of stories, whether it's a comic news story or a story with photorealistic images or ultra realistic images from the future. And I can use these different types of stories and define different types of prompts to generate different stories and images to produce different types of output for the story generator. So that just gives me a lot of flexibility to change the output of the video and the style without having to go into the automations and tweak all of these individual nodes to change anything. So the way it would start is I would create a new row in the system. I would pick which type of story I want to create. In this case, I'm just going to pick another comic news story. But again, we could pick photorealistic to generate something more like this. But for the demo here, I'll pick the comic. Then you would simply upload a source. In my previous example, I simply grabbed a news article. I'll copy and paste that again. And then once you have these 2 items defined, all you have to do is hit this checkbox that says ready to go. Once you do that, it's going to trigger this automation here. It's going to do several different things. This is going to generate the story and the different scenes and all of the different parts. You can see it just generated the story. If I jump over to the scene, you will notice that for each story, it breaks it up into multiple scenes. And then for each scene, it breaks it up into multiple parts. And the way this automation works is that you can actually generate still images and you can automate those as videos, or you can actually produce the animated video and use that instead. And I'll show you how to use both options. So now we can see where the system's now working on story 15. That's the one we just added here. And so you can see it has already generated all of the different scenes, and then it has started to create 3 different image prompts for each part of the story. And so if we jump back here, once it has generated the story and has also generated all the scenes, then it will start to create the images and animated videos for each different scene. And then as those images and videos are generated from Leonardo AI, they will start to be imported into the system like this. Here you can see we now have the 3 videos for this particular scene. So now it will start to generate the audio. It will also assemble the video from these 3 separate parts. And that happens right here where it takes the 3 different parts and assembles it into one large video with the tool JSON to video. That's this platform right here. And then down here, it generates the audio. And then after it creates the audio and the video, it will merge them together into a final audio and video file that completes the entire scene. And then it will continue to build out all of these different pieces until it is completely done. All of the different parts, the audio, the video, and then the merged version. And then once we've merged the audio and video for each different scene, then it will be able to take all of these and produce the final video. And then that final video will be produced and dropped right here. So you can see now we have all of those complete. And if we back out and look at the last automation that it ran, we can see here that it went through and it grabbed all of the different scenes together and made one final call to JSON to video to produce the final video with the captions. So that'll take just a minute or 2 to produce. And so now we have that final video. It looks like from beginning to end, it took about 10 minutes. So I'm going to show you how to build out this entire Airtable database from scratch. We'll add each of the different tables here, all of the columns, and we'll also build out this entire automation from scratch, step by step. And in this automation here where we generate the images, I'll show you how to either just use a still image, just like these, or how you can turn those still images into these automated images. Now, if you want access to the make.com blueprints so that you can just upload that blueprint and have the automations ready to build out just like that, as well as a full built out Airtable base, make sure to jump into my new community, the No Code Architects. It's an active place. There's already 250 members asking questions and helping each other out. And in the classroom, you can get access to a lot of my templates, including the Airtable base and the Make blueprints. All right, so let's get started building this out. First, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new Airtable base. We'll start it from scratch. Go ahead and close this window here. And then I'm just going to delete these initial fields. I could rename them, but I'm just going to get them out of my way. I'm going to rename this table to stories. And I'm going to rename this here to all stories. Then I'm going to change this main column here to a auto incrementing field. I'm going to name it the story ID. We're going to change the field type to auto number. Go ahead and click save. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build out some of these other tables that we are going to need. There's quite a few things that we need to add here to make all this work. So we might as well jump into the deep end. So now I'm going to create a linked record to the other table that we need to build. So it's automatically going to build that out for us. So we'll create a new table. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and create the story types. We're going to turn this off, allow linking to multiple records, create the field. Now it's created that field for us. Going to go ahead and rename this to story types. Go ahead and click save. Now we can come back to stories. Then I'll go ahead and add the next linked field. We'll call this one scenes. Every story can have multiple scenes. Again, we're going to pick link to another record, create new table. We'll leave this one on because every story will have multiple scenes. So we want to allow linking to multiple records. We'll go ahead and create that field. Now we've got our scenes table. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a long text field. We're going to call this one the source. This is where we're going to drop in our source article to create the story from. Go ahead and create that field. Now I'll go ahead and create another field. This one we'll call the story. This is where we'll drop in the newly created story from ChatGPT. We'll make this one a long text as well. Go ahead and create the field. Next, I'm going to jump back over to story types, and then I'm actually going to move scenes over here into this position here. And then I'm going to jump back over to story types. I'm going to go ahead and build out the remainder of this table now because we need some of the columns here in order to complete the stories. I'm going to rename this view to all story types. And then I'm going to rename this column here to story type. Then I'm going to add another column here. I'm going to call this story prompt text. And this will be a long text. I'm going to go ahead and create that field. So we'll use this to create the prompt. And then we'll add another column here to store where we generate all the different scenes. So we'll call this scenes JSON prompt. And I'll explain why I have this word JSON here in a moment. We'll go ahead and create the field. And now I need to create 4 additional columns. These columns are going to define the width and height of the images that we create and then the final video that we output. We'll need these values in a bunch of different places throughout the automations. So I'm going to go ahead and create these. All 4 of these will be a number, 0 decimal places, and no thousandths separator. Output width, create field. Then I'm just going to duplicate this a couple times, make it a little easier. And then we can change each one of these. So this will be output height. And then we'll have the image width. And then we'll have the image height. And we'll go ahead and click save. And now I'm going to go ahead and add one story type for the comic news. This is a linked field, so we don't actually put anything here. In fact, I'm going to hide it from this view. Now I'm going to start to format this table a little bit. I'm going to make it an extra tall row height, and then I'm going to adjust these a bit so I can see more. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy in my prompt. So this is the prompt we'll use to create the actual story. It essentially tells ChatGPT to read the article above, and we'll insert that. We tell it the context, you're a tech news reporter. Let's create a 20-word factual review of the article, and we're just explaining everything that needs to happen. You can go ahead and copy the rest of it just like this. Next up, we need to add the scenes JSON prompt. I'm going to copy that and paste that in just like this as well. What this is going to do is it's going to create a JSON object that we can use in our automations for looping that contains the narrative and then also all of the AI image prompts that we need. Just to make this easier for you, I will link to these 2 prompts in the description below so that you don't have to waste time trying to read and copy this directly into Airtable. And then finally, we need to define the output width and height of our video. In this case, I'm going to make a horizontal YouTube video. So the width will be 1920 by 1080. And then we need to put in the image width and height for our image generation tool, Leonardo. You can obviously see that these dimensions are smaller than our output, but they are the same aspect ratio. And we do need these values in here in order for Leonardo to properly process our request. So now I'm going to come back over to stories. And now I should be able to select a story type. In this case, I will have just one, the comic news. And so now that we have the story types, I'm going to go ahead and pull in the values that we added into this table here so that we can have them inside the story table. So if we come up to this little caret here, we're going to add lookup fields, and we are going to add all of these fields to this table. And then we can add those 6 fields. I'm going to quickly modify them and just take off this section here. It just tells you that this lookup column came from a different table here. I'm just going to go through each of these and remove that. Just not necessary to have. Almost done. One more to go. And there we go. So now you should see that when we select a specific news story, it automatically pulls in the values from that table. We have our story prompt, our scene JSON prompt, and the output width and height, and the image width and height. So before I try to finish the stories table, I'm going to jump over to the scenes. I'm going to rename this here to all data and fields. I'll explain why I'm doing that later. This view here is going to show us every single column with no filters. And then once we build it out, then I will create other views with a limited view of data and columns, and I'll change the name then. But sometimes it's nice to have a view that just can see everything, especially when we're building things out. So first I'm going to come up here to this main column and rename it to scene ID. Then I'm going to add another text field here, long text called scene. This is where we can put the narrative for each scene. Then I'm going to create another field here called AI image prompts. Again, we'll use long text, AI image prompts, create the field. Looks like I got an X in there real quick, pull that back out. And now just for readability, this is linking back to the stories table, but it's a one-way linkage. So any given scene is only going to be linked to one story. So I'm going to rename this column on this side of things to story, and then I'm going to turn this off, allow linking to multiple records, confirm that change. Now I need to go ahead and create another table here. It's going to be our fourth and final table. This is where we're going to store all of the images or videos that we create using the Leonardo AI API. So I'm going to go ahead and create another column. I'm going to link to another record. I'm going to go ahead and create a new table. I'm going to call this the video API. I'm going to leave this enabled, allow linking to multiple records. You can see now that we have our new table. I didn't give it a name, so I'm going to come over here quickly. I'm going to rename it Video API. Go ahead and click Save. Now I'm going to come here and rename this column to Job ID. We'll leave it as a single line text. I'm going to add a attachment. I'm going to call it Video. We'll go ahead and create the field. And then each one of these records can only attach itself to one specific scene. So I'm going to change this, edit the field. I'm going to take off the S and also this here, which allows it to link to multiple records, confirm the change. And then I'm going to move this table right here as it's more associated with the scenes table here, and then we can continue to build out our table. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a lookup table from this column here. We just added it. As we add in new videos from Leonardo, they are going to be linked up to this particular record, and I want to be able to pull in those videos from this table. So I'm going to come up here. We're going to add a lookup field. We are going to pull in the video here. We can add the field. Now, because we will have multiple videos for each scene, I'm going to rename this column to videos, and I'm going to remove this extra text here, videos. Now I need to add 3 more columns, which are going to help us determine when this entire scene is complete. We will make 3 API calls for each different scene that will create 3 different videos. And so we need to count how many videos we requested and how many videos are actually complete. And then finally a column that will tell us when they're ready. So here I'm going to add a new column. This is going to be a count, and I'm going to call this num videos. And for the source, we are going to use the video API. So that's counting how many linked records we have here. Let's go ahead and create that field. Then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it, and I'm going to change this to completed videos. And to do that, we are going to add a condition here, and we are going to change this to video, which is now looking at this column here when it is not empty, and then we can go ahead and click Save. And so this column here is counting how many records we have linked, and then this column here is actually telling us how many videos have actually been uploaded into our Airtable system. And now we need one more column that's going to tell us when they are equal. So now I'm going to make a column called Ready. We'll use this formula, and you can copy this just like that. Make sure you copy it exactly as I have it here, including this closing parenthesis, and then create the field. You'll notice it's saying that there's an unknown field name called completed videos, and it's because I called it complete videos. So I'm just going to fix it here. Click create field. Then I'm going to rename this column here, completed videos, and then go ahead and save it, accept the change, and then that will automatically update the formula for me. I'm also going to add another formula field. Sometimes we need this, sometimes we don't, but I just like to add it in case I do. Record ID, and then for the formula, you can just start to type record ID, and then this is going to come up. You can select it. You do need to finish it with a closing parenthesis and then create the field. I'm also going to add a created and last modified timestamp. Sometimes that's helpful for debugging. Last modified time, it'll automatically fill in the field names. Now we've got to add a few more attachment fields for the audio, the compiled video, and then the merged audio and video. So I'll create an attachment, call this audio, then I'll just go ahead and duplicate it a couple times and then rename them. So this will be the combined video. Remember, we're going to create multiple videos for each scene. So we'll combine those videos into a single video. And then finally, we will merge the audio and video into one. We'll go ahead and save that. And then finally, we need to add a few lookup fields here from the story itself. Remember, in the story, we pulled in the output width, height, image width and height from the story type. Now we need to pull that same value through to the scenes from the story, which was originally coming from the story type. So I'm going to jump back to scenes and then go to the story, add lookup fields. Then I'm going to add the output width and height and the image width and height. So hopefully you're seeing how to structure a database and link together different fields and to pull in different fields that you need into other tables. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and rename these and remove the extra text here that was added to show us where the data came from. I'm going to go to each one of these and do the same thing. Come here, final one. Click save. All right, so that finalizes this view here. I'm going to go ahead and add in a new grid here. Just going to call it all scenes. Create new. I'm going to move that to the top here. Now in this view, I'm going to go ahead and group it by the story. That way all of the scenes are grouped together with the story. And then I'm going to hide a bunch of the fields because we don't need them. I'm going to start and just hide all fields. I'm going to enable the scene, the AI image prompts, the videos, the audio video, and the merged version, the created and last modified date, and then also the column ready so that we can see when the completed videos matches the number of videos that we have. And then I'm just going to rearrange these a little bit. I'm going to put the created down here, last modified. I'll move the ready to here. I'm going to shrink the screen just down a little bit so we can see a bit more. Now we can see the scene ID, the scene itself, the prompts, all of the videos that we've generated from the AI, the audio voiceover, the completed video, the merged, and whether it is ready. And this actually should go right here. And I'll make this a little bit smaller. And then in preparation for later, I'm going to add a new section. Just going to call it automations. This is how we're going to trigger different things. And I'll add a section for scenes, put this here. I'll add another section for other, add this here, move automations right here. So I'm back in stories now. Let's go ahead and add the lookup tables that we need. From the scenes table, we want to pull in all of the videos that we create so that we can assemble them and build that final video. So here we can come up to the scenes, we can add a lookup field. We're going to scroll down and add the audio and video version. So from the scenes table, we are going to pull in the finalized merged audio and video version of the scene. I'm going to go ahead and rename it and just pull off the extra text that they add. Go ahead and click save. Now here as well, I'm going to add a few other records. We're going to have a ready to go checkbox that we can use to fire off the initial automation, create field. Then I'm going to create a done checkbox that we can use to clear out done videos. Done. Create the field. As always, I'm going to add a record ID just in case I need it. Formula, record ID. Again, you can type record ID, close the parentheses, create field. Now, just like we created a ready field in the scenes table, we need to do the same in stories. So we need a column that calculates how many videos we should have by how many scenes we have, and then how many are completed by how many videos we actually have here in the audio plus video. So I'm going to add a new column. We'll call it num scenes, and we'll do a count, and we will count the number of scenes. We'll go ahead and create that field. Then we'll go ahead and duplicate this. Duplicate. Here we will rename it to completed scenes. And so to complete just the completed scenes, we need to enable this here and change this to the audio and video where it is not empty. Then we can go ahead and click save. And then we can add a ready column. This is going to be a formula. And then you can copy this in just as I have it here. And then you can go ahead and create that field. And then finally, just for reference, I'm also going to add a created and modified. Created time and modified time. And I use this just for debugging. It makes it a lot easier. So with that, our stories table should be complete. Let's go ahead and do some final touches, and then we can move along to the final automations. I'm going to create 3 new sections here just to prepare for the next phase. I'm going to call this one Other. I'm going to call this one Stories, and this one Automations. I'll put this All Stories here. I'm going to duplicate it and call this one All Data and Fields. That way we have a field that just always shows us everything. It's good for debugging. And in All Stories here, I'm just going to rearrange things here. And I realized that there's one other column we need to add. So we've got the story type, and we can put in the source, and then it's going to generate the story. So let's bring that over here. We don't need to see the actual prompts here, so I'm going to go ahead and hide those. Same with this one here, the JSON prompt. I'm going to remove. And when I say remove, I mean hide. We don't need to see the heights here and the dimensions, so I'll hide those as well. We don't need to see the actual links to the scenes here. I'm going to hide that. We don't need to see the combined audio and video, although maybe for debugging, it'll be nice to have that. So I'll leave that. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, make this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to put ready to go right here. We don't need to see the record ID. I'm going to remove num scenes, completed scenes. We'll leave the ready, the done, and the created and last modified. I'm going to shrink the story ID down a little bit, move this down a little bit. One thing we do need to add is the final video. So I'm going to come up to this caret here. I'm going to add to the right. I'm going to add an attachment, and here we are going to type video. We'll go ahead and create that field. Do some minor adjustments here just to make things a little bit easier to see. You can do the same on yours. All right, so now we're in good shape to move on to the actual automations and build this all out. If we missed anything in the Airtable build out, then we can add that in as we go. But I think we have pretty much everything we need. And if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It tells me what type of content you want more of. All right, so let's jump into the automations now. I'm going to build them out in chunks. This is the section that builds the story and the scenes. Then we'll move on to the section that builds out the animated images and still images. Then this section here assembles the various videos that we created into the full scene and also the audio. This merges the audio and video, and then this finally builds out the entire full video. All right, so let's start here. I've got a blank automation here. I'm gonna go ahead and rename this just so I can start to build it out. Content, story, magic, demo. I'll even just save it. And then I'm gonna jump back to Airtable real quick and update the base name, content, story, magic, demo. And so for the first step here, we need to generate the story. And then from the story, we need to generate all of the different scenes. And then for each scene, we need to generate the different AI image prompts that will be assembled together to build the videos and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this row here. We don't need it. I'll jump back to stories. I'm going to delete these 2 test rows. And if you want to use the same source material that I'm using in my demo here, you can find it at the same place where I linked up the story prompt and also the story JSON prompts. So I believe this originally came from CNN. I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste that into there. And then I'm going to go ahead and adjust the height of these columns so that we can see a bit more. Now here's where we need to start to build out some additional views that will allow us to trigger our new automation. I'm going to go ahead and create a Airtable node here that allows us to watch for responses. This is actually a webhook in disguise, and it's just going to give us a URL that we can call from Airtable to trigger this initial process, the one that we're going to build out right here. So go ahead and add. You can click save. It's going to give us a URL. Go ahead and click OK just so we don't lose anything. I'm going to come back to Airtable. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new grid. I'm going to name this grid generate story. And after we create 1 or 2 of these, then we can just start to copy them and we don't have to take so much time. I'm going to move that new grid into automations. And then I'm going to adjust the filter here so that only certain rows will enter this view. We don't want just any record coming into this view and generating a request to make. We only want specific ones. So first and foremost, we want to make sure we have a source. So I'm going to say source is not empty. And then I only want a row that has no story. So once we've generated a story, we definitely don't want it showing up in this view. So I'm going to change that to story is empty. And we also want to make sure that we gave it a story type. Remember, we have these story types here. We want to make sure that we've applied that so that we know the given prompt and the JSON prompt that we need to use. Those are associated with the story types. Remember, we define those here. So back here again, I'm going to add another condition where the story type is not empty. And then we're going to add one more, which is ready to go is checked. Notice that the row that we had here fell out of the view because that is not checked. Now next, I'm going to jump into the automation section here. I'm going to create our first automation, add a trigger when a record enters a view. Let's go ahead and name it now. I'm going to call it generate story. And then we're going to update the table to stories, and the view is generate story. So now when a new row enters this view, it's going to generate a trigger, which will then allow us to run an automation. And in this case, we are going to run a script. I'm going to cut and paste some code here in just a second. But before I do that, we do need to add an input variable, record ID, and then we can add a column. And this data that we're adding here is from this step here. So we're referencing the Airtable ID of this row that comes into view here in our script. So again, I'm going to come back to edit code and add this here. So in that trigger, I need to pull in this record ID here. So I'm going to erase this line here and insert this code here. What this code is going to do is simply call the remote webhook that we are creating on this side. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to copy this address to clipboard and add it here into the code. Make sure you follow the case that I'm using on this variable name here. It does matter. Record uppercase I, lowercase d. We copied in the URL. And then notice here we are also passing an action equals generate story. That way we can branch off in our automation and only perform the action we need for any given call. At this point, I should be able to finish editing. I'm going to jump back to data real quick. I'm going to go ahead and mark ready to go. If I come back to generate story, we should have that row here now. So if I come back to the automation, I should be able to choose a record because that is now in the view. I should now be able to come to this script and trigger that. But first, before I do that, I'm going to come to this automation and run it once. Come back to Airtable, we'll test that action. We should see that pop through here. That just came through. So if we open up this little bubble, we are going to see the record ID from that row and then also the action generate story. So from that, we can now create a route that will only operate off of that particular action. We'll add a router. Here we are going to add a filter. The condition is going to be the action and is going to be equal to generate story. Make sure you spell it the same way. Go ahead and click OK. For now, I'm going to go ahead and delete this module. Now, this particular action is going to perform two different actions. So I'm going to add another router. It'll come here, it'll do the first action, and then it'll come through and do the second one. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to pull up the full record. Here, we only have the record ID. We don't have any of this data yet, so we need to pull that up. So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to go to Airtable. We're going to get a record. Here you will need to create a new connection to your Airtable base. Go ahead and go to add, connection type, OAuth, content, story, magic, demo, save. You'll want to add a base, content, story. Here's my demo here. Make sure you grab the right one. Go ahead and grant access. It'll select that connection and you can continue. Pick your base. In this case, we're going to grab the table, stories, and for record ID, we are going to use the record ID from this module here. You can go ahead and click OK. Then we need to add a ChatGPT completion. This is going to generate our story, create a completion. If you don't already have a connection, you'll need to add a connection to your OpenAPI account. For model, I'm going to use system40, and then we will add a message. For role, we'll use user. And so for the message content, we are going to use our source, which is our source article. And then we will want to add our story prompt text. Make sure to expand that and grab the actual message here and not the array. You can go ahead and click OK. For max tokens, you can just pick 0 and click OK. Now, if you'd like, you can go ahead and add an error handler. Sometimes this is good. I use the break module. If you try to execute too many connections at once, this will rerun it later without having to restart. I'll go with 5 and 1. And then you can add a filter here. For the condition, you'll use the message, and you'll want to say contains 429. Then you can click OK. You can move that down and then add the next step. We just simply need to update the story row with the story that we generated here. Go to Airtable, update record, make sure you pick the connection, content story magic demo. You're going to have to update your permissions to also write. Just go through that same process, add base, pick the same demo that you're using, grant access, then you pick the base, table, stories. For the record ID, you're going to use the same record ID from the original request, and you're simply going to drop the result of ChatGPT into the story. You can add the result. You can come down here and click OK. You can go ahead and click Save. Now, because we are using the break module here, and you are going to get a warning because we are using the error handling here, it's just telling us that we need to enable incomplete executions in order for this to work. Go ahead and click Save, but you can come down here to the gear. Right here, you'll say Allow Storing of Incomplete Executions. Go ahead and click OK. Again, you can click Save. You won't get that warning this time. And then you can go ahead and align everything to fix the alignment. And then from here, we can build out the other branch. Let's go ahead and look up the record again. Here, we're going to go to Airtable, get a record, pick the correct connection, the right base, table stories. Again, the record ID is from the original step. Click OK. Now we're going to create another ChatGPT completion, create a completion, select the connection model. I'm going to go ahead and use 4.0 again as well. We're going to create a new message. Role is user, message content. This time we are going to use the scenes JSON prompt. And this time we're going to use the actual story that we generated in this step here. For max tokens, you can go ahead and put 0. Come down here to show advanced settings. For response format, you can move this to JSON, and then you can go ahead and click OK. Now again, if you want, you can add an error handler, break, attempt it 5 times with a minute break in each interval, add a filter, message contains 429, which again is the error code for too many requests. You can move this down. Next up, we need to parse the response from ChatGPT. So we're going to add a JSON module right here, parse JSON, and we're going to pass it the result right here. Go ahead and click OK. Let's go ahead and save everything. It's going to give you a warning that a transformer should not be the last module. You can save anyway. And then let's go ahead and run this. Again, it's going to give you a warning, just click run anyway. And then let's come back to Airtable, come back to our automation, and let's go ahead and test this action again. Jump back to make so we can see it run. It got past our filter, created the story, updated the story. Let's double check to make sure the story is there. Notice that it fell out of this generate story section because it was looking for an entry that had no story. If we come back to all stories, we now see that we have the actual story. Then we loaded up that story and send it to ChatGPT. Let's look at the output. Let's look at the result. So inside this JSON that we asked ChatGPT to create, we have the narration plus the AI image prompts, and then we sent it to parse JSON. So if we look at the output there, now we can see that we have broken it down into make so we can use these in the next steps. So that's looking good. Let's keep going. Now we just need to create an iterator and a couple more steps. So I'm going to add an iterator here, and we are going to iterate over the pairs. So we can go ahead and just select that there and then click OK. Now we need to convert using a JSON module, transform to JSON, each of these values into a string that we can write to Airtable. Go ahead and click OK. So next we need to create a new row in the scenes table that is linked up to the story, which is going to create the scenes for the story. So however many scenes that we generated from ChatGPT, it's going to create one new row for each scene, and then it's going to drop in the image prompts for each scene, because for each scene, we break up that scene into multiple different parts. So if we have one scene, it might have 3 different images associated with it. So we'll come here, we'll go to Airtable, we're going to create a record. Again, make sure you pick the right connection, the right base, content story magic demo, table. In this case, we're going to pick scenes. You're going to leave the scene ID blank. For the scene, we are going to use the original, this is the narration. And then for AI image prompts, we are going to use the JSON string that is coming from this transformation. You want to make sure to grab that. That is a object. Here, we need to grab the actual string. Double click that, it'll add it right in. Here at the story, you want to make sure you link it back to the original story. We're creating these new rows, but they need to link to the story here. So here, you're going to add in the record ID of the original story, which is this record ID here. You can go ahead and click OK. You can now click save. Actually, we need to run this here, so it's waiting for a connection. And then we can test that trigger again in the generate story automation. It's going to come through. It's going to come through this filter. It's going to create the story again. Now it's going to create that JSON again, except this time it is going to parse it and then iterate through and create the scenes with the image prompts. So you can see here, if we open this up and we look at the pairs, we had 6 different scenes. Each scene has multiple image prompts here. So it created 6 different rows. So if we come back to Airtable and then we jump over to the scenes, for this story here, we have 6 different scenes, and now we have the AI image prompts that we can use when we send those to Leonardo AI. So now we're in good shape. We can move on to the next branch. Make sure you're saving as we go. All right, so now that we completed the story generation and the scene generation, now we can continue forward with the section that actually generates the AI images and the video images. Now, in this case, we're going to start with just the image generation, and we're going to complete the entire automation with just still images. And then at the end, we'll make a slight tweak to add in the animated videos that are created from that still image. So back in Airtable, I am noticing one issue that I just spotted right now is this column here. We need to tweak it. It is a text field that needs to be an auto number field. So I'm going to edit that, and then I'm just going to change this to auto number, and then we'll click save. You can go ahead and confirm the change, and now we can continue forward. We've got our 3 scenes with all of the prompts, and we're in good shape to move forward. So now I'm going to jump back to our automation, and we are going to create another route. And then I'm going to go ahead and just start to align this as I go to make it easier to work on. And so the next thing we need to do is we need to trigger another event and then load up the scene to start working through the AI image prompts. So I'm going to go ahead and create an Airtable module here. We're going to get a record. Again, you need to pick the right connection. And this time, instead of the stories, we're going to grab the scenes, and the record ID is again going to be the record ID that we get in this module here. Record ID, you can go ahead and click save, and then you're going to want to add a filter here so that we only filter on the correct action. In this case, we are going to add the action, and here we're going to type generate scene videos. And then you can go ahead and click OK. Go ahead and click save. Now let's come back to Airtable. And now we're going to need to create a new view to trigger off of. So let's create a new grid. We'll call this generate scene videos. Create new view. We can drag this into the automations. Now we need to add some filters so that only the rows that we need to create images for show up in this view. We're going to add a condition where scene is not empty. Add another condition where AI image prompts is not empty. So again, we want to make sure we have the voiceover and then also the image prompts before we process this. And then we also want to make sure that there are currently no videos so that we don't trigger the same thing twice. So here we're going to video APIs is empty. We have a scene, we have the prompts, but we do not have the videos yet, or images in this case. And again, just to reiterate, I'm using this table here to either store still images to build the faceless video from, or animated videos that are created from that still image. So even though it says video API, it could be still images or animated videos depending on what part of the automation we are working on right now. So now we have 6 rows that are coming into this automation here. So now we need to trigger those and send them over to make.com. So I'm going to come here and duplicate this automation that we previously built. I'm going to change this to generate scene videos. And then I'm going to change this here from the stories table to the scenes table. And then we need to change the view here to generate scene videos. And then we should be able to choose a record. We should see 6 different records here. I'm going to go ahead and pick the first one. And then I'm going to jump into the script here. We need to make one minor change. For the most part, we can cut and paste this. It's going to be going to the same location, but we do need to send a different action. So here I'm going to change this to generate scene videos. And then I'm going to come up here and click finish editing. I'm going to jump back over to the automation. I'm going to just make sure again that it's saved. I'm going to run it once. I jump back to Airtable, then we will test the action. And now we should see that come through to our automation. It passed our filter, and then it was able to get that scene from Airtable. So now we can continue on building this out. So in this next step here, we are going to parse a JSON. We're going to use the JSON module, parse JSON. And for the JSON string, I'm going to copy this from my template. Make sure you respect the upper and lower case here. You can type that in. Since I'm cutting and pasting, I've got to fix that broken variable that was from my other automation. And then I'm going to replace it with the AI image prompts. That's all we need there. We can go ahead and click OK. All right, so now that I have the JSON module here, I'm going to go ahead and save. It's going to give us a warning. I'm going to go ahead and save anyway, and then just go ahead and run this once. Again, I'm going to ignore the warning. And then I'm going to trigger this from Airtable again. We'll go ahead and test the action from the generate scenes video. It's going to trigger through. It's not going to load up that JSON. So now that we have some sample output that we can use, now I can continue on with the automation. We're going to add the iterator right here. And now for the array value, we can go ahead and add in this here. We can go ahead and click OK. And now we can go ahead and add in the Leonardo module here. We're going to generate an image. Now I already have my connections, but I'm going to walk you through how to set them up. We're going to need one for the still images, and then when we circle back later, we'll need a different one for the animated videos. And before I do that, I'm going to come back over to Airtable and I'm going to create a new automation. I'm going to rename this to Leonardo AI image. We're going to receive the webhook from Leonardo here. So I'm going to go ahead and click see all when webhook received. And now I'm going to go ahead and copy this so that I have it when I create my key. Now do keep in mind that when you add your billing information, you want to make sure you buy credits in the API. Don't buy it for the regular interface as if you were working through the web portal. You want to make sure you buy a subscription that has API access down here. And then you can go ahead and create a new key. We're going to call this the Content Story Magic image key, and you're going to add this webhook callback URL right here. Just add that in from Airtable, and then you will go ahead and generate that key. Then you can come here and copy that key, come back to the automation. You're going to add that here, add that to your API key. Make sure to call this the image key, so we know that it's the image versus the animated video. Go ahead and click save. It's going to connect. For the prompt, you'll want to use this value from the iterator here. For the model, go ahead and type Kino. This is the model I'm using here. You can experiment with this another time. There's lots of different options here to create different types of images. For a number of images, go ahead and put 1. For source, you can leave that blank, but you're going to want to expand this here. You can go ahead and make sure that your images are not public. For height, you're going to select the image height, not the output height. Output is for the final output size of the video we create. In this case, we are passing through the image size that we want Leonardo to create. So go ahead and pick the image height and then pick this inner value here, 1. And then for the width, you're going to pick the image width. Expand this and again pick that little value right there. Accidentally put it here, so I'm going to delete that. Make sure it has the open and close bracket. Come down to width, image width, and then you can scroll down and just make sure you pick the SD version number 2, and then you can go ahead and click OK and go ahead and click save. So now that we have our Leonardo module, I'm going to go ahead and create an additional step. We're going to create a row in Airtable, create a row. Again, use the same connection, pick the base. For the table, this time we are going to pick Video API. Again, we are going to use the same table for whether it's still images or an animated video. For the job ID, you'll want to use the image generation job ID. For the scene, you can add this. We're going to use the scene that we triggered from this original state here, which is this module down here, module 1, record ID. And we don't actually have the still image or video yet, even though we made the call to Leonardo and it continues on to create the row in this video API table to track that video and ultimately save it. It takes a little time for Leonardo to actually generate that image. And so when it's done, it's going to use this callback that we added and it's going to send that here to this automation, and then we can finish this out here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and click save. I'm going to go ahead and click run once. I'm going to jump back to Airtable. I'm going to go to this automation here, generate scene videos, and I'm going to trigger this once here. We're going to see that patch through, go through, and now Leonardo is going to create that image, and then it's going to start looping through and creating the rows. So if I jump back to Airtable to the data, we now see that we have a job, and now we have a second job, and it'll soon have a third job. But again, no video, correct? So now we're just going to jump back to the automations. We're going to go to this automation that we created with the webhook. And as long as you set up your API correctly with the webhook, when you come back to Airtable, you should start to see that there is a request coming through. You can always test the trigger. But what you're going to see here is the data from Leonardo coming through to Airtable. So next up, I'm going to add a script here. And now the value that I'm dropping in here is also in that same place that I gave you the prompts earlier that you could cut and paste. Simply just cut and paste that code directly into this script and click finish editing. Then you can continue on with the automation. Here I'm going to go find records, and then we are going to use the video API table. You're going to find records based off of condition. Then you're going to add a condition. You're going to say where the job ID, change this to is. Go ahead and come to the gear. Go to dynamic. Now you can select this little plus. You're going to select from when webhook received. You'll come into the body, scroll down to the data. Then you come into the object. and then you'll pick this object ID here. Click that object ID. Then you should be able to test the action. It should find a row. Next, you can add a step, update record. For table, you're going to pick the video API table. For record ID, you will use the record ID from Find Records. Scroll down, pick record ID, then you're going to update the fields, choose field video, you'll use the little plus. Again, we're going to use the data from the webhook received into the body, scroll down to the data, into the object. Then you will scroll down until you find the URL of the image. You'll need to go into images, and from there you scroll down, you'll pick this URL here. Then you can do run as configured, run test, should update the record. And if I come back to the data, you'll see that it updated the last record, and it's the last record because it got 3 webhook calls, but we only were able to process the last one during testing. And so now we have that image. And now what we can do is we can come back to automations and we can turn on this webhook so that from now on it'll run automatically. Then we can also jump back to our automation. We can do a run once, waiting for a new request, jump back to Airtable, gonna go to generate scene videos. I'm gonna test action here, jump back to make. We should see that pop through, got past the filter. Now it's looping through the different prompts. It's generating image number 1. And while these are running, I'm gonna jump back to Airtable, jump back to the data, and I'm gonna delete these original 3 rows. Don't delete any of the new rows that it's adding here, but these original 3 that it created in our previous test, I'm going to delete those, delete all. And then if I jump back to the automation here, to the Leonardo image automation, and I look at the run history, we should see those 3 entries coming through. 1 already ran successfully. So if I jump back to the data, we're seeing those images starting to come through. Looks like there's 1 that hasn't fully finished, then there it is. So like I said, we're gonna start here. We now have our images for a single scene. Looks like we're about halfway through. Like I said, I'm gonna come back through after we finish the rest of the automations where we build the entire video using the still images. I'm going to come back through and then we're going to do one more Leonardo API call to create the animated images, and then we'll just run the same process again with those. But for now, we are ready to move on to the next automation. And if I do come back here to Airtable, you will notice that now there is only 5 rows in the automation section where we generate the scenes, because we now have all 3 images for this scene here. And so now you can see here, it's mapping those 3 still images here, and it's also marking this column ready to move to the next step. So then if you had all of your automations on, including the make automation, all of these things, all of these scenes would be processed as well. But let's now move on to this next section here, which is going to generate combined video from the 3 still images right here using JSON-to-video.com, and then also using ElevenLabs to build out the voiceover that will be added to that video. So now if we jump back to Airtable, we have 1 row that is ready. So now we can create a new view for the next automation. Let's come down here and create a new grid view. We'll call this build scene audio plus video. Create that new view. We'll move that up here into the automations. For this filter, we are going to make sure that ready is equal to 1. So now we have 1 row here, and then there's one other condition, that the audio and video combined file is empty. That way it doesn't run multiple times. Now we can come up to the automation. I'm going to put all of our webhooks at the top, and then I'm going to duplicate this view here. Best to duplicate this one and not this one because this revolved around stories. And here we're continuing to deal with scenes. So there's just fewer things I need to change. So I'm going to duplicate this here. I'm going to change this to generate scene audio plus video. I'm going to change my trigger. The table stays the same, scenes, but I'm going to change the view to build scene audio and video. And then I'm going to change the code here. We can leave this the same, but we do need to change the action to generate scene audio video. Then we can go ahead and click finish editing. Then I'm going to jump back to the automation. I'm going to create an additional route here. I'm going to go ahead and auto align. This route will also call another router. So I'll go ahead and build that now. An additional router with 2 spots. I'm going to align that. And then I'm going to add the filter here. Again, we're going to use the action that comes through from the webhook action, and we will name it generate scene audio, video. We'll come down here to OK. I'm going to go ahead and click save. I want to make sure you're doing that periodically. Let's go ahead and run that once. Let's jump back to Airtable and let's trigger to make sure everything's functioning. Looks like it's trying to test 2 steps because I didn't find an additional row here first. So I'm going to jump back to step number 1, choose record. Should only be 1 row because there's only 1 row that's ready. Jump back to step 2 here. I'm going to go ahead and test that action. Jump to make. Should see that pipe through here, go through the correct path. It looks like it would have continued. We've got the green check mark, so now we can start to build out these 2 automations. So as always, the first thing I need to do is I need to go to Airtable and get the record that we are working with. You're gonna pick the correct connection. In my case, the Content Story Magic demo. Pick your base, pick your table, scenes, and for a record ID, we'll use the record ID from this step here. Record ID, go ahead and click OK. Then we need to build out an iterator. We're going to loop through the different images that we've created. Open iterator. And here we are going to use the videos array. Make sure you grab the entire array and don't pick audio or video. Make sure you grab videos. Go ahead and click OK. And now we're going to create a JSON. So go ahead here to JSON and create JSON. And to make this a lot easier, we're going to add a data structure and we're going to call this JSON to video part. And then we're going to click here and click generate. And then for the sample data, you can find this in the same document that I provided to you to find the prompts and the other variables. Go ahead and make sure you use the JSON to video part. Copy that directly here. Go ahead and hit generate. It's going to generate this here. All you have to do is come down here to save. And then once that's there, you can add an element. And now we can fill in the variables here. For source, you'll want to grab the URL from the iterator, which is iterating through the videos variable that's in Airtable here, which are these here. If for some reason this isn't coming up, make sure you just save it and reload it, but it should be there. Go ahead and click the URL for your source. For type, we are going to type image. A little later in the video, we're going to come back and rename that to video when we use the animated videos. For zoom, you can go ahead and put 2. What that's going to do is slightly zoom in on each still image to give it some motion. For width, here we are going to start to use the output width and output height instead of the image width and height. So make sure you use the output height. Open this up and grab the 1 within that. For the height, you are going to grab the output height. Number 1, for duration, because it's an image, we're going to go ahead and put 5 seconds. That means we are going to sit on each image for about 5 seconds. And for position, you're going to type center dash center. And now you can go ahead and click OK. And then you can save. It's going to give you a warning, but you can save anyway. Now you can continue on with the automation. We're going to add another JSON. In this case, we're going to parse the JSON and we are going to use the string from the previous step, this JSON string. Go ahead and click OK. And then you can close out the iterator with the close iterator. For the source module, you'll use this iterator here. In my case, it is 34. Now, because this automation hasn't run before, it looks like it's not giving us the elements that is coming out of this step here. So go ahead and click OK. Go ahead and click save. I'm going to give you a warning, save anyway. Go ahead and run that module. Ignore the warning, run anyway. Jump back up to Airtable, jump into the automation, make sure you're in generate scene, audio, and video, and then you can test that action. Jump back to make, should patch through, and it should finally create that value so that you can come in here. And now you should be able to select elements, click OK. Now we need to create an additional JSON. Go ahead and add another module, create JSON. This time we're going to add a new one. We're going to call it JSON to video scene. And we're going to again go to generate. And for this, we are going to use this block of code here. Just copy that entire piece from the document that I provided to you into the sample data. Click generate. It's going to generate this structure here. You can go ahead and click save. Now we can add in the different fields that we need to. For the ID here, we are going to pass in the scene ID that we are working with so that when JSON to video is done processing that video in a similar way that Leonardo called Airtable with the finished image, JSON to video is going to send us the final video. And so we need that ID to link it back and find it in Airtable. So here for ID, we are going to use the record ID from the initial module. For FPS, we can just put 25, leave cache and draft empty. For width, we are going to again use the output width, open this up and select the inner value. For height, you're going to use output height. Again, open it up and use the inner value. I accidentally added it here. go ahead and delete that. If you did the same, come down to height, go inside that variable. If you made a mistake, make sure you have the open bracket and closing. Otherwise, just start from scratch and do it again. Height, output height. Now for the scenes, you're going to click this little map button and it's going to give you a place that you can just simply add in a field. Once you click in here, you're going to add this entire array. So what we did is we basically looped through to create the 3 elements for our scene, and now we need to tell JSON to video what those scenes are. This is the final JSON that we need to create for them. We created a JSON with the scenes, and now we're inserting that into the master build request. Now we're going to expand exports, and again here for destinations. And now be very careful when you type this. It's very important that you get this right. You are going to type here webhook, and then for content type, you are going to type application/JSON, just like this, application/JSON. And for the endpoint, we need to create a new webhook inside of Airtable. So I'm going to jump back to Airtable and I'm going to create a new automation. I'm going to call this JSON to video scene. I'm going to create a new trigger. I'm going to go to see all, and I'm going to, when a webhook is received, then I'm going to copy this webhook back into the automation here at that endpoint. For quality, I'm going to put high. For resolution, I'm going to put custom, and everything else can be left as is, settings and elements. Everything else here is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now in this final step, we need to make the call to JSON to video. So I'm going to go to HTTP. You can type HTTP here. We're going to make a request. For the URL, you can copy this as it is here. For the method, you're going to move that to post. For the headers, you're going to add in x-api-key. You will need to create an account and get access to your API key. You'll copy your API key into the value here. For body type, you are going to use raw. For content type, you are going to select application/JSON. For the request content, you are going to use what we built in the previous step, JSON string, and you want to parse the response. Go ahead and click OK. Everything should be good. I'm going to go ahead and save that request. And then I'm going to go ahead and run once. I'm going to jump back to Airtable. I'm going to move my triggers back up to the top. I'm going to keep my webhook triggers up at the top and then my Airtable triggers down here. I'm going to re-trigger this automation here to spark this here. It's making the call to JSON to video. Open this up. We have a status code 200. We know that was successful. So I'm going to jump back to Airtable, and fairly shortly, if I jump back to the JSON to video scene, once that video has completed, it should give us some data here that we can use to build out the rest of the automation. I'm going to test the trigger here. If you don't see anything right away, it means JSON to video is processing your video. You can always go to JSON to video and look at your render log. They will show you the videos that they are working with. Looks like they did finish it. So if I come back to Airtable and we test the trigger again, now it looks like we have that request back from them. I can go into the body. There it is. There's the video. And now I can simply create the next step, which is to update the scene. Again, we're going to use the table scene. Remember in the previous step, we passed the record ID to JSON to video. And now inside of Airtable, they passed it back to us. So if we come back here to the plus and we use the data from the webhook, we go into the body. We can scroll down and we look for ID. There's the ID, the record ID. And now all we need to do is update the video here with the URL from JSON to video. So we can use the blue checkbox again, go into the body, scroll down. There's the asset there. And we can move run as configured and we can run the test. And before I jump back to test it, I'm going to go ahead and turn this one on. I'm turning on all the webhooks now. I will turn these triggers on when we are done. I'm going to jump back to the data, and now we have that video here. I can open this up and play the still images. Notice there's a slight zoom. Should switch every 5 seconds. Slight zoom. It's just still images at this time. Another 5 seconds and it moves to the next image. So we are good to go there. The final thing we need to do is generate the audio. So I'm going to jump back to the automation and we'll build out this second phase here. So I'm going to go ahead and just clone this because it's a similar module. I'll remove this, double check everything is correct. We're just loading up the same record that we did here. And now we're going to generate the audio with ElevenLabs. ElevenLabs, we're going to create a speech synthesis. I'm going to go ahead and use the Atom voice here for the model. I'll use 11 multilingual version 2. For the text, we are going to use what's in the scene. This is the voiceover. If we jump back to Airtable quickly, we'll see the scene here with the voiceover. We can leave the rest of these as is. We'll go ahead and click OK. We can go ahead and move on. I'm going to use Google Drive to save the generated file from ElevenLabs. I'm going to upload a file. I have a temporary directory that I'm going to use, folder location. Just going to select this here. I have a trash folder that I use for temporary files. So I'm going to select that, and then you can map it to the file from the previous step, just like that. You can also enter a specific ID. If you create a folder and just grab the ID from the URL, you can do it that way. In this case, I'm just going to select from the list and grab my temporary trash folder and click OK. Now I'm going to create a shared link so that I can upload it to Airtable, Google Drive, scroll down. I'm going to get a share link. Wasn't sure what that error was, just cleared that out. For the file ID, I'm going to use the previous step, file ID. You want to make sure that the type is anyone, is a reader, allow file discovery, you can leave that off. Go ahead and click OK. Now all we need to do is drop that file back into Airtable. I'm going to go to Airtable. We're going to update a record, pick the right connection, go to the right base. Then we're going to grab the table. We're going to use the scene. And this time we are going to update the audio. So you can go ahead and add another item. For the file URL, you can use the web content link. Make sure you use the web content link. And for the record ID, again, you can use the record ID that had triggered the entire process from the very beginning in step number 1. Go ahead and click OK. Then you can go ahead and trigger this one time, and then we can come back to Airtable. We can go to the automation. We can go to generate scene, audio, video. We can test this process, jump back to the automation. Should see it come down through here. It's going to call JSON to video one more time. Then it's going to go through the process of generating the audio and then updating Airtable. If I jump back to Airtable, we go to the data. We now have the audio. I should be able to open this up and play it.
In a high-stakes cover-up, burglars executed LA's most...
So it's just reading here from the scene. So there we go. We have that next piece in play. The next section we need to build out is right here, which is going to merge the audio and video together into one file. We're going to call JSON to video to do that work. And then it's going to drop that merged file right here. First, I'm going to create another view. We're going to call this merge audio plus video. We're going to do create new view. We'll move this up to the automation section here. For the filter, we want to make sure a video exists. So we will search for video. Make sure not to grab videos. Video is not empty, and audio is not empty. And then we want to make sure that the audio video is empty. This one here is empty. And now only rows that are ready to process for this new automation will run. We're going to jump back. Let's come to our automations. Let's go ahead and duplicate this automation. We'll rename it to merge audio and video. We'll come to the trigger. We'll change the view. We can leave the table as is, but we're going to change the view. Remember, I'm copying from this section here because this one was connected to stories. So we'll change this to merge audio and video, choose record, and we'll choose the record that's there. Now I'm going to jump over to the script. I'm going to make a quick edit here. We can leave everything pretty much the same, except I need to change this to merge audio video, merge audio video, merge audio video, finish editing. Now I'm going to jump over to the automation. I'm going to create a new route. I'm going to go ahead and align that. Going to add the filter, condition, action. We'll update this to merge audio and video and click OK. And now, as always, we need to load the record. I'm going to go ahead and clone this again just to speed things up. Although when I did that, it messed up the filter, which is a pain. Redo that real quick. Careful about that. That's a downfall. I should have cloned it first. Action, merge audio, video. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now we need to create a JSON. Create a JSON. In this case, I'm going to do an add. I'm going to rename this to JSON to video merge audio and video. I'm going to click here, generate. From the document, I'm going to go here to JSON to video. I'm going to grab this section here. I'm going to copy that. Going to jump back to the sample data. I'm going to drop that in there. Then I'm going to go ahead and click generate. It's going to generate the JSON for me. I'll go ahead and click save. Again, here for the ID, we are going to add in the ID from this module here in the beginning. Record ID, FPS, we can put 25. We can leave the cache and the draft alone. For the width, we're gonna use the output width. Open it up, grab the inner value. For the height, we're gonna go ahead and grab the output height, inner value. Now we're gonna go ahead and add scenes, and we're gonna have two elements here. We're gonna add element 1 and element 2. For the source, you're gonna open this up and add the source of the video first. So here's the video, you're gonna open that up and you're gonna grab the URL. For type, you're gonna type video, and for duration, you're gonna put -2. And what the -2 does is it tells JSON to video to limit the length of the video to the audio. So the audio is going to be the master in terms of determining the length of this new video. Then we're gonna go to the source of the second element here. And this time it's gonna be the audio. We're gonna grab the URL. I accidentally added that to the duration, so I'm gonna erase that. I'm gonna make sure I'm in the source of item 2. I'm gonna make sure I didn't delete the duration here. I'm gonna go to audio URL, type. I'm going to go ahead and type audio. For duration, you're going to add -1, which tells JSON to video that we are using the full length of the audio as the master length. So for quality, I'll type high. And actually for cache and draft, go ahead and just put no. And for quality, put high. For resolution, put custom. And then the last thing we need to add is the exports. Add an export, then you'll add a destination. For type, you're going to type webhook. For content type, you're going to put application/JSON. And now we need a new endpoint for this new operation. So let's come back to Airtable. We can go ahead and copy this JSON to video scene. Make sure not to copy this one. Let's copy this one here. We'll duplicate it. Let's rename it to JSON to video audio plus video. Then let's come here to the webhook. Let's grab this URL, come back to our automation. We'll drop that in the endpoint here. Then we'll come back to Airtable. We're not going to be able to finish this until we actually have a value here. It'll automatically fix itself once we do, or we'll have to clean it up either way. So I think everything is good here. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And real quick, I'm going to jump back to this previous JSON and just also put cache equals no and draft is no as well. That's in the previous JSON to video. I'm not entirely sure what those do, but I noticed they were in mine. So I'm going to go ahead and just put those. We'll go ahead and click OK. So now we should be able to move on to the final call here. Just to make things easier, I'm going to go ahead and clone the previous JSON to video web call, use it here. Go ahead and open this back up. Everything should be good, except you'll notice that the request content is broken. So you'll fix that with the contents of what we have here. JSON string, go ahead and click OK. You can go ahead and click save. You can go ahead and click run. Now let's jump back to Airtable. We need to trigger this and get a video coming through the system to finalize. So I'm going to jump back to our trigger here, merge audio video. We already updated this here. I'm going to test the action, jump back to make, created the JSON. Let's see if our request was successful. Status code 200, that's good. Jump to JSON to video. Let's see if it's rendering our video. So that's running. So as soon as that's done running, then it will trigger that webhook. So now that that's done, we can jump back to Airtable, jump into the JSON to video, audio to video webhook, jump into step number 1. Looks like something came through just a second ago. You can always test the trigger again. It's going to grab the most recent webhook. We can see inside the body. Looks like it fixed our automation. So once we come in here, the scene, it's already finding the record ID and it's updating the video. Although this is the wrong field to update, make sure you change this. You want to change this to the field, which is audio plus video. And then we're going to update this here, jump into the body of the webhook, scroll down, grab the URL. We're going to run as configured here, and then you can run the test. And then I'll turn this back on. I'm going to leave the actual triggers off, but all of our webhooks, I just turn those on as we build them. Jump over to the data. Notice that that row left the view here because we added the video. And now if I jump over here, we have the completed scene. So I'll go ahead and play that.
In a high-stakes cover-up, burglars executed LA's most...
So that looks good. So jump back over to make. Let's just make sure everything is saved. And now at this point, what we want to do is really trigger the rest of the process so that we have the completed merged audio and video for every single scene to finally finish the final video and do the last automation that we need to build right here, which is going to take all of those scenes and build one final video and also add the captions, right? So In order to do this, what we need to do is we need to trick the system into triggering again. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn on all these automations. They're working as expected. And now one way we can kind of trick the system is to come back to the data. I'm gonna go back to scenes. I'm gonna go to the build scenes because we haven't even built the scenes yet for these. We've only generated the videos, this section here for this one row. So I'm gonna come to build scene and audio. Actually, I'm gonna come to generate scenes, right? So now here's the problem is that these have been sitting here and they're no longer gonna trigger anything. So I'm just gonna come up here to the filter and add something just to get rid of it. So I'm gonna add scene and I'm just gonna put something unreal here. Click OK, continue. So everything disappears. I'm going to turn this automation on now. If it ever asks you to process old data, just go ahead and delete old data. Start it from scratch. Are you sure you want to delete the old data? Yeah, during testing, it's better. All I really want is all of our new data. If there's anything sitting in there, I don't want that there. I'm going to back out. You have to back out so that you can kind of see if things are running correctly. Now I'm going to jump back into Airtable, double check that I turned on these automations. Okay. And then I'm going to come here to generate scene videos and I'm going to remove this fake filter here. Everything's going to pop back in at once and it's going to trigger all of those automations over here. So we should start to see a bunch of automations running as expected. Now, one thing that I didn't do is while this is running, I'm going to jump into the make automation. Actually, I'm going to edit it because it's possible we give too many requests to ElevenLabs. So I'm going to add an error handler here real quick. A break, number of attempts, 5, intervals between just 1. And then I'm going to add a little filter here. Message contains 429, just so I don't overload it. Click OK, save, and then back out again. So we can see here, do we have all of our automations running now? Looks like they all left here. So they must be generating images. So we're waiting for those images to come through now. Just to kind of follow along here, everything popped out of this view because when this automation ran here, it created the rows, it created the video objects right here for our Leonardo still images. And because it did that, they no longer show up here because remember we had to have the video API table had to be empty. So if we jump up to the automations and we go to the Leonardo image and we should see, yes, see, we have a bunch of processes coming from Leonardo and it takes them a little bit longer because we added this little script here, which is just a delay. So the automation for Leonardo runs pretty quickly and it can cause this interesting condition in Airtable where there's a race condition, this automation fails. So I have that little break in there. That's why I added this little time delay. But if we jump back to data and look at the video APIs, these are all starting to pop through now. So now if I jump back to the scenes, we've got all of our scenes now. And so now you can tell that the automation is continuing to run. If I jump back to make, now it's generating the JSON to video and the audio. So those are coming in as well, the videos. Now it should be running to merge these for all of the ones that we have complete. And those are starting to come through now as well. So that's a good sign. And then once these are all complete, then we can do the final automation, which is going to build the final video here. So these are all complete now. And if we jump over to the stories, we're also seeing that it's ready as well, because remember we built those fields that calculate for every scene, do we have an equivalent number of audio and video files. So now what we're going to do is we're going to finalize this automation. We're going to add one more route here, which is this one right here, which is going to grab all the scenes and build the final video plus add captions. And we'll test that through. And then after that, after we have it completely working, we'll jump back to this step here with Leonardo and we'll turn the still images into a animated video, and then we'll rebuild the whole thing with animated videos instead of these more still like images here. So you might just want the still images or you might want the animated videos, but I'm going to show you both options so that you can try them both out and see which one you like better. And then of course, it would be totally possible to swap out Leonardo for another image generator, of course, as well. So I'm going to go here and auto align everything. I'll go ahead and save it and then we can continue on. All right, so let's finish this out. We got one main automation to get done. If you're still here working through this and everything's working, you are awesome. Let's just keep going. So now we are in a situation where we have all the scenes built for a specific story. We have all of the audio and video necessary. So now we need to jump back to the stories and we're going to see here that it is ready. So now we need to create a new view for the next automation, which is going to merge and build out all of the scenes. Going to come down here. Let's create a new view. We'll call this one build full video. We can create the new view. We can move this into the automation section here. And for the filter, we are going to want to make sure that the ready is equal to 1 and that also the video is empty. which it should be. So now we have one row here waiting to be finished. Now I'm going to jump back to the automations. This time I'm not going to duplicate any of the triggers that were used to trigger for scenes. I'm going to go back to the story one here and duplicate that one because that one's on the story table. Update this to build full video. Jump up to the trigger. Table should be stories, but the view is build full video. Let's go ahead and choose a record. We should have one record here. Let's go ahead and update the script, edit the code. All we have to do here is change the action to build full video, finish editing. Now I'm going to come back to the automation and I'm going to add another route. I'm going to go ahead and align everything. As always, we need to get the row, the story. You can't grab any of these. These were the scenes. So I'm going to come back to the top here. I'm going to clone one of these and add this. Actually, I can delete that. Move this. Going to update the filter. Action should be build full video. Then we can go ahead and click OK, align everything again. And now we just need to build out that final automation that looks just like this. So first we need that iterator. So we'll add the iterator here. So we need an array here. We're going to loop through the audio and video array, which is full of all of our different scenes. We'll click OK. Then we'll go ahead and create a JSON just like we did before. Create JSON. In this case, we are going to use the parts one that we've already created. So for the data structure, you can open this up and you look for the JSON to video part. I have two of them because I created one for the demo and one for myself. Add the elements. For the type, it's going to be video. For the source, we're going to use the URL from the iterator. Make sure that's video. For the source, use the URL. Duration is going to be -1. That just means we're going to use the full length of the video. We're not going to cut it short. For position, we're going to put center. It just centers the video with their video that they're creating. So moving on from the position center, we're going to move into the height, click into height. Then you're going to do output. You're going to expand that and use the inner value for output height, and then click into width, use the output width, use the inner value for that as well. For zoom, we've already done the zoom on the individual scenes, so we can leave this at 0. Then you can go ahead and click OK. Then here we are going to parse the JSON, so we can parse it, parse JSON. We're going to use the output from this previous step here, JSON string. Go ahead and click OK. And then we are going to close the iterator. We're not going to have all the values that we need, so I'm going to run the automation in just a second. Here's the iterator. Source module is going to be this here, which looks like 50. For me, it's going to be something different for you. And then for now, because I don't have the values yet in this drop down from this section here, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm going to click save. It's going to give me a warning. Go ahead and click through to that. Go ahead and run this once. It's going to give you another warning. Run anyway. Then jump back up to Airtable. Can't remember if I already pulled in a record. We're going to choose a record, story number 3, then jump back to this and we're going to test the action. Jump back to make, should pipe through to this final section here. You can see here it looped through the 6 different scenes and built the JSON. So now we should be able to finalize the aggregator here. So now that that has run, we can select parse JSON elements. You can select that. You can go ahead and click OK. And now we need to create one more JSON, which is going to take everything that we created here, all of the scenes, elements. So now we need to create one more JSON here before we send it to JSON to video, where we take the elements that we created in this iterator and we combine them with everything that we need for that final video. So I'm going to go ahead here and create a JSON. Create JSON. And for this one, we're going to create one final data structure. You can go ahead and click add. We're going to call this the JSON to video full video. We can come here to generate, and then in the text that I shared with you, you can grab this entire section here from the build full video. Just make sure you grab the entire thing, copy. You'll add that to the sample data, click generate. That's going to build out everything here. Then you can click save. And now we can simply fill in this information here and we'll be done. For the ID, we're going to use the ID from the original call. Here, the record ID, FPS, we can use 25. Cache, I'll go ahead and use no and no. And width, we're going to use the output width, the inner value. For the height, we're going to use the output height, the inner value right here. So make sure you've got those correct. For the scenes, we can go ahead and turn this on here. This is going to use the array from the iterator here. For exports, you can go ahead and add a new export, and then you'll add a destination. For type, you're going to type webhook. For content type, you're going to type application/JSON. And then for endpoint, we need to come back to Airtable. We're going to create another endpoint for JSON to video. You can go ahead and clone and duplicate one of these. Duplicate, let's rename it to JSON to video full video. And for the webhook, you click into this and then just copy that, come back to make, put that into the endpoint. For quality, you can use high. Resolution, you can use custom. For elements, you go ahead and add a new element. This is going to allow us to add in the information for the captions. For the different values that you can use for their captions, you can go to their main website and look up the docs and just see what they have available. So for type, we're going to put subtitles. For language, I'm going to put EN, all caps. I'm just going to use all caps. For position, I'm going to use mid, bottom, center. It puts them in the middle at the bottom near the center. For the font size, I'm going to use 75. For the font family, I'm just going to use this one, Luckiest Guy. That's the one that they used originally. And for the outline width, I'm going to go with 5. You can change all that stuff later. Make sure to check for no spaces, any of that kind of thing. You don't want any empty spaces. The scenes comes from here. We got the width and the output height. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Then I'm going to go ahead and clone one of these other modules that we used previously for JSON to video, stack it right at the end here. Just need to jump in there and fix the broken value that's going to be in the request content for what's in the previous step here, this JSON string. Then you can click OK. Then you can go ahead and click Save. And now we are pretty much all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and run this once so that when I jump back to Airtable and I jump to our new trigger here, build full video, pretty sure we already chose a record. Then I'm going to test the action, jump back to make real quick. It's going to send that to JSON to video. Let's just double check the status code. We have a status code 200. That means if I jump over to my dashboard and look at my renders, we should see that final video being built out. That's running. This one's going to take a little bit longer than the previous ones because it's stacking together all of the previous scenes together to build one final long video. All right, so now that looks like it's done, I'm going to jump back to Airtable. I'm going to jump into our new trigger. Looks like something came through just a second ago, but you can always test the trigger as well. If it's not coming through, it means that something in your JSON isn't correct with the URL. Maybe something is misspelled with webhook or application JSON. So now we need to update the table from scenes to stories. We're updating the main story at this point. So this is going to break fields down below. Make sure you remove the broken field. It was able to recover and use the record ID from the body, so that's good. So now we just need to change the field. We're going to look for the video, and then we can go ahead and come in here to the body, scroll down to the URL, add that, run as configured here, run the test. Now, before I jump back, I'm going to just go ahead and turn this trigger on, jump back to the data. Notice that the row is gone now. If I jump back to all stories, the full video is here now. And if I watch that, it's going to be the full video that we generated from JSON to video.
In a high-stakes cover-up, burglars executed LA's most sophisticated cash heist, amassing a whopping $30 million.
I'm not going to watch the whole thing. It looks like it came out to about a minute. You can see it's zooming in on each individual image. It's got the captions and then the AI voice generation from ElevenLabs. So there we go. The final thing to do now would be to simply come up to the automations and then do a final test. Let's turn this automation on. And then we could just simply come back to the data. We could come back to all stories. I'm going to scroll all the way over to the left here. I'm just going to add a new row. I'm going to add the story type, comic news. Then I'm simply going to copy the source from this one into the same section here. First, make sure that this automation is on, make sure it's saved, and then I'll go ahead and just do ready to go. Then I should be able to come back here and it should start to execute the story generation and then the scene generation. We should be able to kind of bounce back and forth between Airtable and Make. So we see the story is here. If we jump over to scenes, we should see it generate the additional scenes in just a second here. There are those scenes coming through, and then that should be triggering the image generation. So we see that going off now as well, creating new video API rows. And as those are created, these should drop out of this view here. So these are all getting created. So now if we jump back to the automations and we jump into the Leonardo AI image, run history, now we see all those getting created as well. Again, they're going to pause for 25 seconds just to avoid a possible bug and race condition that can happen between Airtable and Leonardo. So once that 25 seconds passes, they'll pretty much all just run all at the same time. So pretty quickly here, we'll see all of these start to turn to green. They're going to populate in no specific order. Now it's starting to ramp up here as they all finish out. And then as these scenes complete, it's going to trigger off the process to build the audio and video. If we jump back over to Make, it's starting to create the videos and also the AI image and also the AI voiceovers. We're starting to see all of the audio pop in and the video is starting to come in from JSON to video. Once we have a pair here, we're going to see that branch off to start to create the merged audio and video versions. And then once all of those are ready, we should see this ready tick to 1. It just moved to 1. So now it should be running that final automation to create the final video, which is a 200. So that's good. So it's just rendering that final video right now. If I open this, refresh, that's running. And so that's just going to finish out just like it was before with this final full video webhook that's going to update Airtable with the final video. So while that's finishing in the background, let's go ahead and start to think about updating the automation to use the animated videos instead of the still images. So if you notice here in our videos, it is all still images.
In a high-stakes cover-up, burglars
You see a little motion, but it's just simply because I did a little bit of a zoom when I rendered the videos together. And it doesn't look like this, which actually has this movement here in the video, which is a feature from Leonardo that takes the still images and converts them into a animated video. So this is going to continue out. It looks like it's still rendering. Yeah, still running. Let's go ahead and tweak this automation to do the animated videos instead of the still images. So in order to do that, I'm going to come here. So after we create this still image, I'm going to go ahead and add a module here, a router here, and I'm going to have one route in case we want to do the still images and then one route in case we want to do the video images. And so here I'm going to add a filter, which is going to make it impossible to move forward. I'm going to put if 1 is equal to 2, which never happens. So it's no longer going to execute this path, and this will just allow us to swap back and forth as we want. And so now what we need to do here is we need to make one more API call to Leonardo to create the animated video. So to do this, I'm going to add a Leonardo module. This time we're going to make a custom API call, and I need to add a new connection. We do not want to use the connection that we added for the still images because that's going to call the wrong callback. Remember, if I come back to Airtable and we go to the automations, we have this automation here that's waiting for a callback for the still images. And in fact, I'm going to turn this one off. We don't need it anymore. And I'll just simply come down here and create a new automation. I'll move it to the top. I'm going to call this Leonardo.ai video. I'm going to come down here to see all when webhook received, and then I'm going to come here and copy that. And now I'm going to jump back over to Leonardo. I'm going to add a new API key. I'm going to call this one the content story magic video key. And I'm going to erase what is here. This is the webhook that it's automatically adding that I don't want. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to add the new webhook that I just copied out of Airtable for this one here that is right here. I'm going to go ahead and generate that key. I'm going to copy the key right here. I'm going to jump back to Make. I'm going to add a new key. I'm going to call this the video key. I'm going to add that key here. Go ahead and click Save. For the URL, you can go ahead and copy this into your automation. For the method, we're going to use a post. This header should have been added for you, but if not, you'll need to add a header with the key content type and value application/JSON. And then you can cut and paste this from the document that I gave you. You will need to change this placeholder as when you copy it, it will break. And then you will simply replace it with the previous step where we generated the still image. So we're going to modify that. You're going to go into the generated image here, and then you're going to use this ID right here. Make sure you're in between those two quotes so that you don't break it. And then you're going to add that ID. And then once you have that, you can go ahead and click OK. Now we do need to run this because we need the output of this API call. Number one, to finalize our webhook here, and then also to finalize the Airtable update here. So go ahead and click Save, and then go ahead and click Run Once. And now let's go back to Airtable and just turn off the generate scenes automation just so we can trigger it manually. Turn that off. Then let's jump back to the data. Then let's jump back into one of our scenes here. It doesn't really matter which one. And then we're going to scroll down. If the fields are hidden, go ahead and there's going to be a button to unhide those fields. Go ahead and scroll down to where you get to the video API. And then we're going to remove all three of these for one of these scenes here. So this scene should be empty, just like that. Now what that's going to do is it's going to set us up to be able to trigger it again. So I'm going to come to generate scene videos, and because I turned the automation off, it's no longer going to trigger automatically. That way I can come to the automation, I can come back to the trigger, I can choose the record. There's going to be 1 here, 7, and then I'm going to jump to the script, and I'm simply going to test the action. This automation's already waiting for it. Here it comes. So it's generating the still image, which we no longer need long-term, but we need it to create the animated video. Once it's done, it's going to move to this path here and make the API call. Status code 200, that's good news. That means we can now finish the process. First, I'm going to just jump over to Airtable. I'm going to jump back to our new webhook for Leonardo video. Here's the webhook. Once that first animated video is complete, it's going to send it to this new webhook that we added. If I test the trigger, still doesn't have anything. Leonardo is going to take 20, 30 seconds to develop that video for us. While we're waiting for that, let's jump back and finish the automation. So here, I'm going to just simply clone the Airtable record here, add it here, and let's just double check what we have. So for here, we need to change the job ID. We're going to erase that, and we are going to use the value that came from this previous step. So we're going to look into the body here, and we are going to grab this generation ID and put that in there instead, and we're going to click OK, and then we're going to click Save. And then I'm just going to jump back to Airtable. Looks like that record finally came through now. So now the only problem is we weren't able to add in the new job IDs from the new call we made here. So when we try to set up this automation and we try to look up the row like we did in the previous step here where we do the find records, we're not going to find it because we didn't have that job ID there. So I'm just going to jump back to the scenes and clean things up a little bit. So this is still blank because we were never able to associate data coming back from Leonardo back to this row here. But now that we have the automation and we're able to create the new records with that generation ID, then we'll be able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK again. I'm going to make sure we save it. And then I'm going to run it again once. I'm going to jump back to Airtable. I'm going to jump back to generate scenes. So here's that scene that we want to generate again. Going to jump to automations, generate scenes, make sure we're on the right video again. Choose record, still that 7. I didn't really need to do that, but I'm just going through it, and I'm going to test it again. So now this time it's going to generate those video images, but it's going to write the video generation ID back to Airtable. So when Leonardo sends us the callback information, we can link it back up and then finally update the data in the scene. So now you can see that it added the rows. That's why it dropped out of this view here. So if I come here, we're seeing it's adding the rows. We have 2 rows now. So now it's made all 3 rows. So if I jump back to Airtable and then we go to the automation, the last time it ran was about 4 minutes ago. So we need to wait for the new ones to come through. When that comes through, we'll see it. It'll just say a couple seconds ago. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and set up our search. We don't need to do this delay script on these for a technical reason. Looks like that came through here. So that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish this out. We're going to add a find record. We're going to look up the table video API, find records based on condition here. We're going to look for job ID. We're going to change this to is. We're going to use the gearbox, dynamic. We're going to add the plus. We're going to go into the body and we're going to go into the data. We're going to go into the object. Then we're going to grab that object ID. We'll go ahead and test the action. Should find a record. Found a record on scene 7 as we'd expect. Now all we need to do is update that record here. And for the record ID, we're going to go ahead and use Airtable ID from the find records. Scroll down. There's the Airtable record ID. I didn't select the table here. We're updating the scenes table. So actually it's not the scenes, it's the video API. For the record ID, we're going to use the Airtable ID that we already added. For fields, we're going to update the video. And now we need to find the URL for the video, not the image. So we're going to use the webhook received, go into the body. We're going to jump into the data, into the object. Then we're going to look for images, to the bottom images. And then we're looking for the motion MP4 URL here. Make sure not to grab this URL. That's just a link to the original still image. So make sure you grab the motion MP4 URL. Go to run as configured, run test. Then you'll want to turn this automation on so it runs automatically the first time. Leave off this one here. We jump back to the data. Notice it's gone from here. We're going to go back to all scenes. And now instead of there being an image here or 3 images, we have 1 video, which should be an animated video. Nice. There it is. Very cool. So now what we need to do is just come back to the automations, turn on this automation here, and then we should be able to run one final test with the animated videos instead of the still images. And I'm just going to run back to the stories. I'm going to leave these as is. I'm going to run back to stories. I'm going to create one new story from scratch. Comic news. Again, I'm just going to fill this down so it has that. And then make sure that the automation is on. I'm going to back out so I can see it. Then I'll just come back here and ready to go. And that should start to trigger the entire process once again. Starting to see the story generation and then the scene generation. Creating all the scenes, we can kind of toggle back and forth here, jump over to the scenes. We've now got those, which means that it's now going to trigger all of the image creation and then the video creation. So that's already happening right now. We probably have some of the videos coming back soon through the webhook run history. This will be the first time that we've had it on where the automation actually populates through from the API in Leonardo. Starting to see those come through now. Starting to see those videos populate here as well. So we're going to end up having 3 videos per scene, just like how we have 3 static images per scene. This one now has 3 videos, so it's continuing forward with the audio and it's going to create the video from JSON to video. If I come over here and refresh, we should see some render logs. Looks like we did get an error here and I know what that is from. So I'm going to come back to the automation and I'm actually going to turn off the automation here because I know what the problem is. I forgot to make one change in our automation. So we changed it from static images to videos. So we need to come to this automation here where we assemble individual parts of the scene, which used to be images, and we need to update this to video. So we change it from image to video, and then we need to change the duration here to -1. And we can go ahead and click OK. And now everything else should work and we shouldn't get that same error. So now I'm going to come back to the automation. I'm going to go ahead and just clear this out. Going to delete story 5 and we'll start again. Copy this down. And now this time, did I turn the automation back on? Make sure when you do this, just delete the old data. Otherwise, it's going to continue forward with some of those previous executions that we turned off. And now I'm going to come back to Airtable and I'm going to go ahead and run that again. That's why it's good to have this open so you can see the different errors. If I refresh this, there's probably other errors there as well. Yeah, we had several errors coming from that. And if I look here, it doesn't really tell us what that was, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So come back over to scenes. Now it's generating the new scenes. Come back to the global view where I'm not actually editing it so I can see the runs that are coming through. Now it's coming through again and generating the still images and the animated videos. So quite a few calls are going to be made here as it builds out all of these individual videos. Those are starting to come through, as you can see. You can open those up as they come and just take a look. Leonardo just picks different types of animations. Sometimes it's a zoom, sometimes it actually tries to animate things. We now have 3 here, so now it should be continuing forward. It's creating the audio and the video. Now we shouldn't run into that same issue that we had before. Gonna go ahead and refresh the list. So now it's running for the first time again. Looks like now we have a success instead of an error. So if we come back to Airtable, starting to see those videos come through. So now we're going to see the rest of the audios come through, the rest of the videos. And now because we have a pair here, it has already done a merge. And once you continue to see the 3 parts of the scene completed, it will continue with additional audio and video. Then you just have to wait patiently as all of the different assets come together. Waiting for one final video here. Then we got the final video here. Now it's going to create the final audio and video. And that now that is complete. It is ready for that final full video, which should have triggered here in this view as well. So that should be on its way in the automation, the final. It has now sent that to JSON to video. So now we just need to check the render log here. That is now running. So once that is finally finished, it's going to call that final webhook automation, JSON to video, full video. It will update the row and we'll have that final video here in just a second. It's always hard to wait for that final one to come through. And there it is. Let's take a look. Looks like it came out to about a minute.
Tech-savvy burglars execute one of the largest cash heists in Los Angeles history with high-tech precision. Understanding the technological prowess behind this heist sheds light on emerging threats to financial security. On Easter Sunday, burglars executed a highly sophisticated theft at a cash storage facility in Silmar, San Fernando Valley, stealing up to $30 million. The heist, which was meticulously planned and carried out without triggering alarms, suggests the involvement of a highly skilled group, potentially with insider knowledge. Jointly investigated by the FBI and LAPD, this incident has marked a significant breach in the operations of GardaWorld, a private security firm. The previous largest cash heist in Los Angeles occurred in 1997 when $18.9 million was stolen from Dunbar Armored Inc. Stay vigilant and informed about advancements in security technology to better protect your assets and remain one step ahead of emerging threats.
So there you go. Obviously, you can play around with the video quality and how you're building out these different prompts and the different models you're using to produce the type of content that you want. And again, remember, I have the story types here so that you can add other story types and build completely different types of prompts. And you can use different models and everything like that. So if you don't like the comic book, you can change it to ultra realistic photos or whatever you want. That's all configurable within the story types and how you generate the story and all of that. So don't think that anything that I have here limits your ability to change the prompts and even just come into the automation and just swap out Leonardo for a completely different image and video generator. The real art to this is building the system that can give you the flexibility on story types and how to generate the story and how to generate the different image prompts and how to keep it all organized and scalable and to have it all just in one place in your Airtable base. So again, if you want to just be able to import those make blueprints so that you can skip all of the configuration yourself, you just open it up and have the entire automation just like that and be able to get access to this Airtable base without having to build it out from scratch. Make sure to jump into the No Code Architects. The link is in the description below. You'll be able to jump into the templates and get access to everything just like this. But either way, I hope you found that video valuable. That was quite the video. If you made it through to the end, congratulations, you are awesome. Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you in the next video.